Welcome in, everybody, to the CFB Nation All-America podcast presented by FanDuel. I'm Bill Trocchi, senior editor at sportingnews.com, alongside Bill Bender, our national college football writer at sportingnews.com, and the president of the Football Writers Association of America. We're coming to you live on our CFB Nation YouTube channel again. If you want to subscribe, just go over to youtube.com, search CFB Nation, click subscribe. You will be thrilled at what you find as far as the content over there. Bill, we've got a lot to talk about today. The week 1 through 14 is always busy, and then you think you're going to take a breath, but week 15 and on gets even busier as they've crammed signing day into the first week of December. We've got the championship weekend. We've got the rankings coming out. We've got rankings debates coming out. So, and then, of course, with your duties as president of the Football Writers Association of America, you are going to be busy even beyond what we're working on at sportingnews.com, right?
Yeah, that's part of the job. Again, there's a lot going on this week. We did signing day was yesterday, which, again, shouldn't be, but it is. And we're getting ready for the weekend here. We'll have scenarios for every team that is trying to get in the playoff. We've addressed the Notre Dame Miami thing multiple times. We'll get into Alabama a little bit. But it's conference championship weekend, and I've been, pretty outspoken on here. I don't see the value in them anymore. They're fun. They're money make. Everybody always says, well, they got to replace. There's money to be found. Like they're going to add more confusion in some cases than they do good to the college football playoff picture. But it doesn't mean that Indiana, Ohio State isn't going to be fun, or Georgia, Alabama isn't going to be fun. Even James Madison and Troy will be fun. So I'll watch all the games and we'll enjoy them and we'll go from there.
It is. It's going to be good. So before we get anything, like I said, we're going to talk a little bit of the rankings review from Tuesday night and some of the fallout that we're seeing on social media. And then we'll get into a little bit of National Signing Day. And then, of course, a viewer's guide for championship weekend, which is always a fun weekend. And that the odds there will be presented by FanDuel for us. So my Trocchi trivia question, Bender, this is right up your alley. Are you ready? Right up your alley, man.
Sure.
I know you're going to nail it, although I tried to make it as difficult as I could. So we'll see. Saturday's Big Ten Championship will be the first Big Ten 1 versus 2 since 2006 when Ohio State beat Michigan 42-39. I want you to name the leading passer, rusher, and receiver for each team in that Big Ten Classic. All the names are pretty recognizable. So we will revisit that at the end of the show. The leading passer, leading rusher, leading receiver from that legendary Ohio State 42, Michigan 39, 1 versus 2 game of the century. Maybe we'll get a game of the century between Indiana and Ohio State on Saturday night. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about the rankings. I mean, we had a lot of people join us on Tuesday night when we were going through the live reaction with Brian Driscoll from Irish Breakdown. That was really fun. I guess my question that has kind of emerged, because I've seen Joel Klatt on Twitter go through Notre Dame scenarios, and I think it was Dan Wilkin as well, agreed that they don't have a path to get in their opinion. Joel Klatt says if BYU wins with Notre Dame on that cut line as the last team in, BYU wins, they're going to be out. If BYU loses and drops, suddenly Miami is back-to-back with Notre Dame. And in the back-to-back situation, they're going to jump Miami. Do you agree with that? Is Notre Dame doomed either way? Should Notre Dame be very, very nervous?
No, they can agree all they want. Then why aren't they ranked ahead of them now? Like why that is, I mean, that's an opinion and Joel and Dan are allowed to have it, but I don't think that's going to happen. We can debate about it all we want. Why wouldn't they be ranked ahead of them now? Neither one of those teams are playing, and there's no result that is going to change what they've already said. So like you've said multiple times this week, the committee's either admitting, hey, we screwed up, by putting Notre Dame ahead of them in the first place, or hey, we were right. Hey, the head-to-head result doesn't really matter to us if they're back to back. And yeah, so I respect both of those guys a great deal. I just don't agree at all. I don't. There's no reason to do it. And maybe
I feel like that the committee's in a lose-lose situation. I think I
correct.
said this in the meeting the other day. The lose-lose situation of you could end up with them back to back, and obviously the easy answer is you got to pick the head-to-head when they're back to back. But that's just kind of how the rankings have fallen. So they're going to look foolish there, or they will look foolish to have Miami jump Notre Dame when neither team played, and none of their opponents the teams on their schedule played this weekend, except Boise State is playing on Friday night. That's obviously not really going to have an impact on anything. So it's hard to jump when teams are idle. And I think Ward Manuel came out with it last year and said, yeah, someone can't jump when they don't play, right? And he got ripped for it a little bit, but that's actually the logical way to look at it,
for sure. So, I don't they could, because the committee could change their mind based on peer pressure, but it's not a reason to make a decision. You stand by what you've done the last 4 weeks, then you don't switch them up. So if you really think Miami, as I've said about Notre Dame the whole time, they've been in the top 10 the whole time, and they have not done anything to be ranked outside of the top 10 on the field. Yeah. So we'll see if they get there.
Yeah. So I can't remember who brought this point up, but I agreed with it. Like, I think it was Pete Sampson, actually, from The Athletic. Why do we assume Alabama might not drop if they lose to Georgia in the SEC championship game, but BYU will automatically drop if they lose to Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship game, when Georgia and Texas Tech are back-to-back? They're 3-4. And the point of that is, if BYU doesn't drop, that gives the committee that buffer between Notre Dame and Miami, and they are not back-to-back. So are we sure BYU will drop if they lose?
Probably at least a spot. And then as far as Alabama, why? Every question starts with they wear crimson helmets with numbers on them. You guys like all these hypothetical debates. Why is Texas blah, blah, blah? They have an orange steer on their helmet. Why is Notre Dame? You start the argument
with... That's not a reason, Bill. That's not a reason.
It's absolutely a reason. And if anybody doesn't think it is, like, why does Alabama get preferential treatment? Well, they have that red helmet on. So, in the Big Ten, why does the Buckeyes get... Well, they wear a scarlet helmet, or they have scarlet and gray uniforms. It's a reason. It doesn't mean it's a good one, but it's part of the deal. And that's part of the deal in college football. And anybody who thinks it isn't or shouldn't be is simply not paying attention to the sport. You wrote a great column on sportingnews.com this week after the ranking show that's still up on our college football page near the top, about Alabama being the elephant in the CFP committee room. I think you are a staunch believer that Notre Dame should be ahead of Alabama, and especially if Alabama loses this weekend, they should definitely climb ahead of Alabama. You agree? Yeah, I think what's going to end up happening is Alabama will probably lose a relatively close game to Georgia, but who knows? We'll get into that game in a minute. And if Alabama loses, I think Alabama will slip one spot. I think Texas Tech is going to win. Then they debate Alabama and Miami. I've thought that the whole time. Yeah. Like, if Alabama loses, they're going to slip behind Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's going to be protected a little bit. And Alabama will be the 10 seed. Notre Dame will play Oklahoma in an 8-9 game. I know a lot of our listeners think Notre Dame should be hosting that 8-9 game, and they probably should. But they'll end up in Norman, which will be a fun game. Oklahoma, Notre Dame, that'll be the marquee game of the first round if it shakes out this way.
Yep. All right, let's take a quick spin through signing day. You did a winners and losers column, also sportingnews.com, on our college football page. It's the top story right now, I believe. Some of your takeaways: Bill Belichick got a winner for his first class at North Carolina. You labeled Vanderbilt a winner for flipping 5-star quarterback Jared Curtis, first 5-star in program history. and it's at the most important position. So good for the Commodores. And then Ohio State, a little bit on pins and needles with Chris Henry Jr. Brian Hartline took the USF job, and he's their next superstar wide receiver, expected to sign. Has not signed yet, but is still probably expected to sign.
Yeah, the signing day was really interesting. I mean, I'm not head over heels into recruiting by any means, but you look and watch and see, and USC had a monster class. That was one. The Trojans, the Huskies and the Ducks, all keeping more talent on the West Coast. One of the impressive things with USC is they had 6 of the top 25 players in California, 7, stay home. So Lincoln Riley, you can criticize him all he wants, he knows how to recruit top 10 classes. He's done that. Marcus Freeman has a pretty special class at Notre Dame. I mean, they haven't been ranked that high, I don't think, ever. And maybe in a long time, but certainly not in the playoff era. They haven't had that good of a class. And I honestly think the biggest story of the day is how bad Penn State's class is at the expense of James Franklin, right, who has a top 25 class at Virginia Tech, by flipping about 10 or 11 of those guys over to Virginia Tech. Penn State is a disaster right now. A complete disaster, from the recruiting class to not having a coach to, I saw somebody tweet the list of people that have basically turned them down at this point. And
how much money they've gotten in raises.
Right. It's insane. So, and then as for the Brian Hartline piece of this, that's a huge loss for Ohio State. Maybe the best receiver recruiter of all time. And he goes to South Florida. I don't know. Chris Henry may end up.
And those guys pan out too. That's the thing. They get developed and they pan out. They, very few of them are duds.
I mean, five first-round picks in the last 4 drafts, and they're all good in the NFL.
It's such an assembly line. Yeah,
they're unreal at that position, and that's. But again, I don't know what Chris Henry Jr. will end up doing, but. Brian Hartline, good for him, though. We've been waiting for him to take a job. And people are saying, well, why didn't he take Penn State? Usually don't hate that now you go to South Florida, you can actually find out if you can do it or not. He's gone from passing game coordinator to offensive coordinator to a head coach at this is kind of like the progression you should have as a coach. So I'm excited to see what he can do at South Florida.
Yeah, it's good for him. And Penn State, I think they reached out to Jeff Brom after they were turned down by Sataki. Brom turned them down as well. This is not what they expected when they pulled the plug in October. And you're right. This first coach, whoever it's going to be, Brian Daboll or whoever, they're going to have a big fat 0 as far as their first high school recruiting class. Now, in the age of the transfer portal, you can make up some ground pretty quick in January and get a lot of guys in there. We saw Deion Sanders do it at Colorado, right? I mean, he barely had a high school class that first year, got a lot of transfers in, got the quarterback piece, which was key. So, Penn State is going to be obviously very heavy into the quarterback market, the transfer quarterback market, and see what they can get there, and hopefully make up for the fact that, this high school class is a 0, and that's going to turn up in a year or two. And it's going to be hurting them for sure. So winners and losers, sportingnews.com from National Signing Day. And like you said, Notre Dame, I think one of the points people were making about Notre Dame is there was no drama. They had no decommitments. They had no late, flips or anything like that. So very solid class by Marcus Freeman. Got some 3 5-stars, I believe, an edge rusher, a safety, and a tight end. And that, their secondary has really developed over the years. So good for Notre Dame, and the Irish train is still rolling. So, all right, well, let's get into our viewer's guide for championship weekend. We are on the verge. Our odds presented by FanDuel as we go through it. Friday night, we'll just go real quick. Kennesaw State at Jacksonville State for the Conference USA. Is it Conference USA?
Conference USA, yep.
Conference USA Championship, 7 o'clock, CBS Sports Network. Kennesaw State, just up the road here, 2.5-point favorite. Good for them. I mean, they are brand new to the FBS level, and they are really shooting it up after. And I think it's year 2 for them, and already they're in a championship game. UNLV at Boise State, 8:00 on Fox. They played last year. Ashton Genty was in that one. Boise is favored by 4.5. We got Troy at number 25, James Madison, 7:00 on ESPN. The Dukes are favored by 23.5, expected to get to 12-1. And then we can have the Duke versus Dukes debate if Duke wins the ACC. The other game Friday night is the G5 spot, basically, in the playoff. Number 24, North Texas at number 20, Tulane, 8:00 ABC. Both coaches, of course, are committed to other schools as soon as their seasons end. North Texas, a 2.5-point road favorite against Tulane. Your quick thoughts on the Friday night menu?
No, it'd be good. I'm going to a tree, one of them town tree lighting things for a little bit. So, I mean, I'm not like going to be
Pickerington, Ohio is having a Christmas tree lighting.
Canal Winchester is too. And so I think my daughter's dancing in one parade and then my son wants to go the other way. So split duty in the house. But I'll make sure that we're watching these games, obviously. I mean, first of all, I never get the Friday night games right. We'll be really intrigued by North Texas Tulane. North Texas, I picked them to win the game. I think the quarterback matchup, all this.
Well, they're favored.
Yeah,
even though they're on the road, they're favored.
Everybody thinks Tulane's going to win the game, and I think it's going to be an exciting matchup between those two. They've played some high scoring games. That's the one kind of like Boise State UNLV was last year, where the winner is going to the playoff. I think it'll have good intensity as a result. Drew Mestemaker's been really good for North Texas. I've watched them. I can't sit here and say I've watched all 12 of their games, but when I've watched them, they get up and down, play an exciting style of football, and we'll see if they can pull out a victory there. Boise and UNLV again. Dan Mullen, can he win a conference championship at UNLV? That's kind of an interesting storyline on Friday night too, because he didn't catch that SEC run, but plenty to watch there. And after the Christmas trees are lit, we'll come home and get some hot chocolate and watch the games. It'll be fun.
There you go. And then we got one more group of 5 championships Saturday at noon. This one's on ESPN. Miami of Ohio versus Western Michigan in Detroit. Western Michigan is a 1.5-point favorite in that one. So let's get down to the Power 4 championship games. We'll start with the Big 12 championship. That one is number 11, BYU versus number 4, Texas Tech in Arlington, 12:00 on ABC. Texas Tech is a 12.5-point favorite. It's a rematch. Texas Tech beat BYU 29-7 less than a month ago. The Red Raiders kicked 5 field goals and were actually stopped on 4th down just before halftime. Could have been even more of a runaway, basically. The defense really limited BYU all game. BYU didn't score till midway through the 4th quarter. They were down 26-0 at the time. Jacob Rodriguez, who, by the way, I just read the ESPN story. He started his career as a quarterback at Virginia. Did you realize that?
No.
He was a quarterback at Virginia and transferred to Texas Tech, where he was a walk-on. They moved him to linebacker, and the rest is history. He had 2 of Texas Tech's 3 takeaways. BYU only had 255 yards in the game. That was BYU's only loss this year. Both teams come in 11-1. There is a bye on the line for Texas Tech. There is a playoff berth on the line for BYU. How can BYU make it more competitive this time around, Mr. Bender?
Wow. I mean, they're just a bad matchup, but I do think they're going to keep it closer this time around. Rematches can be, break tendency a little bit. You just can't hammer it with LJ Martin. Baron Bachmeier is going to have some success in the passing game. The Texas Tech defense is amazing. Behind, we're going to have our All-American meeting today and was prepping for that last night. And when you look at each defensive level, there's Texas Tech guys on it. The only other team that has like All-American caliber players on every defensive level is
Ohio State.
Ohio State. Yeah. And I was going to say, like Notre Dame and Indiana would be next. So, but this Texas Tech defense is for real. And if I can't read that. DJ on our comments says, if you can't run the ball in Texas Tech, your life is going to be miserable. And BYU couldn't do that last time. And I kind of see, but there's a couple score predictions up there. I do think BYU can cover. That is entirely possible, but they're having an uphill battle here. That's a really good Texas Tech team. And I think the Red Raiders end up, we talked about that scenario. I think they push BYU out of the playoff picture. I had it we're not doing a confidence contest today, are we?
No, you officially won.
Okay. So, well, I was going to say that I'll give you the prediction we had. I don't know what you have it at. I have it around like 31-17, 31-19, right around the spread.
Gotcha. Yeah. I think BYU's, like you said, I agree. Bad matchup. Texas Tech covers because Texas Tech could have blown them out. I mean, it was at home. This one's not at home, but they had so many chances to really break it open before the third and fourth quarter. And then eventually they stretched it to, like I said, 26-0. And then, so they were never really threatened in that one. So, all right, let's move on to the SEC championship game. We got number 3 Georgia at number 9 Alabama in Atlanta, 4:00 on ABC. Georgia is a 2.5-point favorite. I will be at the game and covering it for sportingnews.com. Check out our site for coverage. You called this a few months ago, Bill. I remember you said, it's going to be Georgia and Alabama after all the dust settles. And we had a 4-way tie for first place in the SEC with these two, Texas A&M and Ole Miss, and tiebreakers spit out Georgia and Alabama, just like you thought. Mostly because they would get the best TV ratings, right? No, we don't say that. So anyway, this is the 9th meeting in the last 8 years and 6th on a neutral field. Bama, of course, leads 7-1, including a 24-21 win in Athens in late September. If you remember, the big play in this one was a failed 4th down by Georgia early in the fourth quarter. The Bulldogs were down 24-21, 4th and 1 at the Alabama 8. And rather than tie the game with a field goal, Kirby went for it. Cash Jones was tackled for a 3-yard loss. And the Bulldogs never really threatened to score again, lost by 3. I went to the Georgia game last week against Georgia Tech, and their defensive speed, it always amazes me when I see them in person. I saw them last year against Clemson, and that's what I walked away from as far as my takeaway for Georgia that game. They didn't play great. They won 16-9. They were in control pretty much the whole game, but they have that endless supply of athletes on defense. You know what I mean? But I don't know. This game's, it's really a toss-up to me. I don't think Alabama, they're right there with Georgia. They've owned them, obviously. And I don't think Alabama should go into this game thinking they're already in the field, though. I think they got to be worried about getting knocked out.
Yeah, and if it's a close, kind of a one-score game, they'll be fine. Again, they wear the helmet that they wear. I mean, like the
houndstooth rule.
Yeah, they have that uniform. I do think it's going to be a good game. You mentioned the speed. That's one thing that always stands out when I watch Alabama-Georgia games, especially during that Saban era. You'd be like, man, there's so many NFL guys on the field right now. The psychological component. Like, the Bulldogs outrushed Alabama 227-117 in that first meeting and lost. So there's some head scratching moments with Georgia over the years in these games that have cost them in this matchup. Now, I was kind of railing against conference championships earlier. They'll care when they get out here. This is the one that I think they care about the most. And they'll have a chance for Kirby to win yet another SEC championship game and then get on the podium and talk about how hard it is to win in the SEC and blah, 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 blah. But they're going to do that. I think they're going to win this game. I do think it's going to be close, though. I think it'd be like a touchdown to 10 points. Not enough to say, unless Alabama just looks terrible. You know what I mean? You can still lose by 10 points and look inept. I don't see it. I think you're going to see a hell of a game. And, Georgia gets over that hump, and that would put them into the 2 seed because I think that based on whatever the result is, the Big Ten championship game, it's going to push Georgia up to 2. And like I said, and I think we talked about it on the pod the other night, if Alabama wins, you think you're mad at them now. Wait till they win and push up to number 4, because they will. They'll push them all the way up there and give them a first-round bye.
That would be something. And, the winner probably so the way the quarterfinals work, either the highest-ranked Big 12 or SEC team gets a Sugar Bowl berth. Mm-hmm. So if Texas Tech remains above Alabama after beating BYU, for example, they'll get the Sugar Bowl, not Alabama.
Right.
But so Georgia, if they win, obviously they will be the Sugar Bowl team and will start in the quarterfinal. And they have a chance to make up for last year's loss to Notre Dame in that game. Let's go to the Big Ten championship game. Number 1, Ohio State versus number 2, Indiana. 8:00 on Fox. Ohio State is a 4.5-point favorite. Least amount of college football stakes, most amount of just awesomeness, right? The nation's only 2 undefeated teams, 2 Heisman Trophy candidates, rematch from last year's Ohio State win over Indiana in the regular season. You have a great breakdown at sportingnews.com today on this game. You see more of a defensive game, which makes sense since these teams are 1-2 in points against in the nation.
Yeah, Indiana struggled to run the ball against Iowa and Oregon and Penn State, and Ohio State's better at defense than all of those teams.
Yes.
So if they struggle to run the ball here, Fernando Mendoza is going to be asked to do more, like Curtis Rourke was last year, and that didn't work out. So I'm interested to see how Indiana attacks it. Can they? I'm not saying they can't run the ball. I want to see if they can, and that'll be a big key for them in this ball game. Ohio State, on a fast track. With one of the things that's happened in the Big Ten championship game over the last couple of years, maybe not last year as much as far as Michigan and Ohio State, when they beat the other team, instead of having like an emotional letdown, they've crushed the next team. It's like a emotional windfall almost. So, if Ohio State comes in like that, Indiana could be in some trouble. They're going to, the Heisman with Mendoza and saying, here's one thing though, Bill, if those guys both struggle, Pavia could win it. Just be like, hey, those guys are bad. It's going to be, I'm doing this story for us for next week on the 25 Heisman winners since 2000. So basically ranking everybody since 2000 that's won the Heisman. And you look back at some of the voting, some of those years were landslides, some were kind of muddled. This is going to be as muddled as can be because I think, those 3 quarterbacks and then Jeremiah Love, I don't know what that voting total will be, but it's going to be pretty close, I think, unless you make an emotional.
You've got 3 Midwest guys kind of splitting the vote up in the Midwest. You only got 1 guy from the SEC. Sometimes that has a factor that people that you've seen in person, you kind of elevate a little bit more and things like that. So,
I got, and then I just think Ohio State's, I'll believe it when somebody scores more than 16 on them, which didn't happen all season. So, if it is a defensive struggle, that would help Indiana in theory. It's funny, one of the scores down there says 24-17. I have 28-17. So, I'm right with you there. I think the Buckeyes maybe tack on a late touchdown, and it's a tight game in the first half, and then Ohio State wins. That would mean that the Buckeyes get the 1 seed, and then Indiana could fall to 4 if Texas Tech and Georgia win their games, which is kind of how I'm seeing it coming.
Don't tell Kirk Cignetti he can't score 17 against Ohio State, man.
He got 15 last year, so it would be an improvement. Well, I want to see what they've learned too. I was at that game last year, and we had gone back and forth. I don't want to say I knew, but you kind of felt that that was going to be that way last year, that Indiana wasn't quite ready for that. And he said that earlier this week in the teleconference. He said, we had to grow from that. It was necessary for growth and development in the program, those kind of things. Well, now we're going to find out what's different because Ohio State is very good. But I still think people are kind of trying to poke holes in their resume and poke holes in how good they are. No, they're good. I've seen them twice. Their defense is unbelievable. And Julian Sands a really good quarterback. Right now, I think he should be the Heisman front runner.
But is he the best player on his own team?
But that doesn't matter.
It does matter.
It does.
Supposed to be the best in the country.
He's got the best numbers on his team. Jeremiah Smith doesn't have 1,000 yards this season. Jeremiah Smith, the Biletnikoff voting, which I haven't done yet, is going to be close with him and Mekhi Lemon. But you could say, is Fernando Mendoza the best player on his team? He's probably not.
Yeah, I think
might be Aiden Fisher. No, you know who the best player on Indiana's team is? I'll tell you who it is. It's D'Angelo Pons, their cornerback. He's the one that's going to be playing on Sunday. Diego Pavia is the best player on Vanderbilt.
By a long shot.
Jeremiah Love's the best player on Notre Dame, unless it's Leonard Moore. So, I hate that argument because Julian Sayin almost has an 80% completion percentage, and people are complaining about it.
They're not complaining about it. They just
they are.
He's the best player.
It's so what? He's the player playing with the best stats, and he played just fine on Saturday. Is he a better football player than Jeremiah Smith? Somebody's got to throw him the ball. If Jeremiah Smith had, if Julian Sayin goes down and Lincoln Kienholz is in, or somebody else is playing quarterback, his numbers might be impacted by that. So it's not fair. I think we're being unfair to Julian Sayin, and probably on some level to Fernando Mendoza. He's got good receivers too. So we'll find out. But if both of those guys struggle, there's no doubt that Diego Pavia is the man.
He'll be the beneficiary of that. Yeah,
he would be the beneficiary of that and that Southern voting because he had a hell of a season getting Vanderbilt to 10 wins. So that debate's coming next week too, I guess. But yeah, I've heard the Julian saying, I get touchy about that. He's still got to throw the ball. Plenty of quarterbacks throw the ball poorly.
What is your feeling? You were there. Is there any possibility Ohio State? There's a huge letdown after finally beating Michigan. What was your sense? Was it like huge exhale? We did it. We've done it. We've done everything we need to do. Or is it like, all right, we still got more stuff to do here?
More of the latter. Sonny Styles was on the podium first. And just their tone was, yeah, it's great to win, but we've got other things in mind,
bigger fish to fry.
It's crazy to say it, but the Michigan game was kind of the appetizer for this one in terms of competition, I think. Indiana's a better team than Michigan this year.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan was not. I think Ohio State knew when they got off the bus that they were going to win that game Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as they didn't screw it up. I think the urgency's there, the want to. This is a program that's won 16 straight games. So Ryan Day's done a great job of keeping them locked in. These are two of the four best coaches in college football right now.
Yep.
In my opinion. So the coaching matchup's fun. It'd be fun. It'll get overshadowed by everything else because once the game's over, we're going to move straight to the playoff. But I really wish this game was I wish they would have played it at noon and then lead into the SEC game. And then you could play this. Then you could play the ACC game at 8:00, which we have to talk about that one too, because that might be the most interesting one of all.
That's right. ACC championship number 17, Virginia versus Duke, 8:00 on ABC. Like you said, Virginia is a 3.5-point favorite, a third rematch from the regular season of the Power Four conference championship games. This one happened just 3 weeks ago. Virginia went into Durham and smacked Duke 34-17. It was 31-3 after 3 quarters. Trying to figure out why Virginia is only a 3.5-point favorite on a neutral field 3 weeks later. But if Duke wins, they could keep the ACC out of the playoff, despite Manny Diaz's declaration on the Andy and Ari show yesterday. Quote, the ACC champion will always be in the college football playoff. So I don't know if Manny is familiar with the rules, Bill. Do you think he's familiar with the rules?
No, because if Duke wins, they're not going to be in. So right. If James Madison and North Texas, if James Madison wins, the ACC.
Maybe he's predicting a Virginia victory when he says the ACC champion will always be in.
We were painting the scenario that if James Madison wins and Duke wins,
Duke's out.
But that instead of having a press conference with Duke and Virginia players, Jim Phillips will just come on and campaign for Miami for 20 minutes. and say, here's why Miami should be in the playoff. But if Virginia wins, we don't have to have this discussion. And it just comes down to, can the ACC get a second team? That also makes it more palatable for the committee to just keep Notre Dame over Miami. And people can say they don't think about these things, but if you gave them truth serum, they do, because it is every bit as political as it is. And I know about politics. I'm the president. So I think that's what they're doing here. That there'll be some political things at work. I do think Virginia's a better team. They run the ball really well.
Why do you think the spread's only 3.5?
That's because it's really strange. I feel like I'm walking into a trap here. Jamari Taylor's been really good. He's averaged 20 carries, over 100 yards the last 4 weeks for Virginia. They've got a kind of a punishing running game, run a good offensive line. ACC championship games that can always get a little goofy. Last year's was, between SMU and Clemson. That was a hell of a game too. So, if Virginia wins, all of this goes for naught. They become the 11th seed, and then the Tulane North Texas team comes 12th seed. And it really comes down to, how do they stack up Notre Dame, Alabama, and Miami? And really, I've said it all week, and I'll continue to say it. They've answered the Notre Dame question. You can't unanswer it. So I really do think if Alabama were to lose, the debate that I've tried to tell everybody this, Miami and Alabama becomes the debate. And I think Alabama wins if it's close.
I agree with your theory. Notre Dame fans should root for Virginia. It makes things slightly less complicated and keeps the ACC in the playoff without Miami. And I think that's a good thing for Notre Dame. So
it shouldn't be that way, but it is, right? Like it
shouldn't be that way, but it is. Yeah.
That's the reality of the situation. So if you're a Notre Dame fan, you are rooting for BYU to lose, and you were rooting for Virginia to win, and your Alabama's result either way. To me,
you want them to lose. You want them to lose.
You want them to lose just to be sure. But if they win, I think you're okay anyway. I could be wrong.
Let's get back to the Troche trivia, and then we will that'll be it. We are not going to be able to do a show on Sunday like we've done during those other shows, unfortunately.
I'm going to be on an airplane.
We will be back Tuesday, 9:30 a.m. You will be coming to us live from Charlotte, the site of the ACC championship game, in the Sporting News home office, which will be cool. And we will review everything 9:30 in the morning Tuesday, and we will get ready for the playoff. But first, Troche trivia. Saturday's Big Ten championship game will be the first Big Ten 1 versus 2 since 2006, when Ohio State beat Michigan 42-39. Bill, I want you to name the leading passer, rusher, and receiver for each team that day.
I worked for the Newark Advocate in 2006, and we did a 36-page special section on this game that I still have buried somewhere. So there's very few things that I don't remember about this game, and I'm going to have trouble with the last one. Troy Smith and Chad Henne were the quarterbacks. That's easy.
You are correct.
Smith, by the way,
threw for 316 yards, and Henne threw for 267.
Smith is the last Big Ten quarterback to win the Heisman. So 20 years later, almost that we might get another one. That's how long it takes in the Big Ten, apparently. Is he the last Big Ten guy to win the Heisman?
Wow.
I think it's crazy. The running backs are easy too. It's Antonio Pittman for Ohio State. He had a big, long touchdown run. And Mike Hart for Michigan.
They both had big games. Yes, Pittman had 139 yards and a touchdown, and Mike Hart had 142 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Ohio State's receivers, Ted Ginn. There's
Ted
no way
Ginn
it's
Jr.
not.
had 8 catches for 104 and a TD.
And here's the hard part.
Well, so this is it's.
I know who they are.
Receiver who had the most catches is different from the person who had the most yardage.
Will you give me credit if I just name both receivers? Because it's like, because I know who they are. I just don't know who had what. Manningham's one. Mario Manningham. He was
Mario Manningham, 6 for 86.
Youngstown kid. And then Adrian Arrington was the other one.
Adrian Arrington, 5 for 90 and a touchdown.
He had the more yards then?
He had more yards, but 1 less.
I would have guessed Manningham more yards. So but I knew who both of them. They went on to, of course, lose to USC, and then Ohio State went on to lose to Florida. So the result of that game, that was one where they did say the result of that one resulted in an emotional letdown. That's the most build up around a Big Ten football game I can remember in my entire life. So it was a lot of fun covering that. The special sections in there, I'm going to go dig that up later today. But no, special thanks to our listeners as always. This has been a really good week. And like DJ's or D-Rock is saying in there, yeah, give us a like, give us a subscribe. Bill and I work really hard this time of year, and we really enjoy what we do. And we'll get after it on the playoff, and we'll try to get to it on Tuesday. I'm going to be in Charlotte for the Nagurski Award on Monday. It ought to be a lot of fun.
Yes, it was a great answer by you. I mean, that was not an easy question. I didn't think it was an easy question.
That was a pretty
right up your alley.
That was a pretty easy question for me, unfortunately. Like, I just didn't know. I wasn't sure if it was Ginn or Anthony Gonzalez. I know all the guy. That game had, Bill, real quick, it had not quite as many NFL guys as that LSU Alabama game in 19, but there are 40 NFL guys that played in that game. That was a good one.
I believe it. So, all right. Yeah, you're right. Thank you to everyone who keeps joining us on these live shows. They've been great. Tell a friend, and we'll be here Tuesday at 9:30 again to wrap up championship weekend and look at the playoff field. We will have the playoff field, Bill, the next time we get together for a live show. So thank you to everyone for coming. Thank you to everyone for listening to the CFB Nation All-America podcast presented by FanDuel on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thank you to Irish Breakdown, your source for Notre Dame football information. Enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the weekend. Enjoy the games. Enjoy the Selection Sunday. Hopefully for Notre Dame fans, you enjoy it. And we will see you Tuesday at 9:30 right back here.